Half-Life has always been one of those games that never really leaves you. No matter how many times you've played it or how deep your knowledge runs, there's always something hiding just beneath the surface. But the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. There are layers to this iceberg that were never meant to be found at all. So let's take a deep breath and dive into the Half-Life iceberg. This iceberg is dedicated entirely to Half-Life 1. While there will be mentions of its sequel, these entries are mainly focused on the original game alone. So with that out of the way, let's enter Layer 0. This is the common knowledge level. It wouldn't be a modern iceberg video without one of these layers. Gordon Freeman. Gordon Freeman is the protagonist of Half-Life, a theoretical physicist working at the Black Mesa research facility. He has a PhD from MIT and is famous for not speaking at all. Throughout all of the Half-Life games, Gordon has never said a single line of dialogue, leaving the player to project their personality onto him. Black Mesa Research Facility. The Black Mesa Research Facility is the main setting of Half-Life, a sprawling, secret US government research complex built into a mesa in New Mexico. It's enormous, labyrinthine, and full of classified experiments. The facility also serves as a character in and of itself, with different sections like the Lambda Complex, Sector C, and many more, each feeling distinct. The Resonance Cascade. The Resonance Cascade is the catastrophic event that kickstarted the plot of Half-Life. After Gordon Freeman inserts a Xen crystal into the anti-mass spectrometer, the machinery undergoes a cataclysmic malfunction and opens several uncontrolled rifts in space-time. This causes several alien life forms from the borderworld dimension, Xen, to flood onto Earth, culminating in the Black Mesa incident. Xen. Xen is the borderworld dimension featured in Half-Life, acting as a bridge between Earth and other alien worlds. Think of it as a dimensional transit space connecting multiple universes. Most of the creatures found there don't actually originate from Xen, instead using it as a passage between worlds or held there against their will. The environment itself reflects this, lacking a true surface and instead consisting of floating islands suspended in a void. Gold Source. Gold Source is a primary game engine that powers Half-Life, and its origins are surprisingly interesting. Rather than building a new one from scratch, Valve instead licensed the engine from Quake, developed by ID Software, and extensively modified it, adding new features like improved rendering, full skeletal animation, and complex scripted sequences, elements that were highly advanced for the time. Gold Source would go on to not just power Half-Life, but also mods like Counter-Strike, giving it a lasting legacy far beyond its original design. Headcrabs. The headcrabs are parasitic alien creatures that launch onto human heads, killing the host and puppeteering the body into a zombie. They're small and jump at the player's face when attacking. They became one of gaming's most iconic enemies, and later games would even introduce variants like the fast and poison headcrabs. The HEV suit. The HEV suit is Gordon's iconic hazardous environment suit. It provides armor, monitors health, and gives voice alerts via a calm female voice.
Welcome to the HEV Mark IV.
It's a simple but important detail that explains how Gordon survives Black Mesa. The crowbar. The crowbar is Gordon's iconic melee weapon. It's the first weapon introduced to the player and one of gaming's most recognizable items. It deals with headcrabs, wooden crates, and the occasional scientist. G-Man. The G-Man is a mysterious suited figure who observes Gordon throughout the game. His identity and true nature are never fully explained, and even today we don't know much information about him. He speaks in a condensed, unnatural way.
As for the suit, I think you've earned it.
And at the end of Half-Life 1, he seemingly captures Gordon, putting him in stasis for an unknown period of time until we see him again in Half-Life 2. Now that we got the boring stuff out of the way, let's enter the tip of the iceberg. This is where things start to get a bit more interesting. Bee hopping. Bunny hopping, often shortened into bee hopping, is a movement exploit present in both the Gold Source and Source engines. By timing jumps perfectly and combining them with strafing and mouse movement, players can continuously build momentum due to how the engine handles air acceleration and friction. This technique later became a core tool for speedrunning Half-Life and has even been carried over onto other games like Counter-Strike, where it became widely known and even controversial, with some servers banning it while others building entire custom maps around it. Casserole explosion. Early on in the second chapter of Half-Life, as you're approaching the locker rooms, you can enter a break room with several scientists and a microwave with a casserole inside. If you keep mashing the interact key,
my god, what are you doing?
The casserole will explode, and a scientist will angrily react. This is one of the earliest examples of how Half-Life produces interactive storytelling, and is even brought up in the second episode of Half-Life 2.
Oh, and Freeman, if you pull this off, I might just forgive you for that debacle at Black Mesa. You know the one I mean, involving a certain microwave casserole.
Valve buys mods. Valve famously used to acquire several Half-Life mods and turn them into full commercial games. Counter-Strike, Team Fortress, Day of Defeat, and many others all started as community mods before being bought out by Valve. This established the company's model of scouting talent from the modding community. However, in more recent years, they've seemed to move on from this tradition, as several fan-made projects like Team Fortress Source 2 and Classic Offensive have been taken down by Valve, marking a noticeable shift in how the company interacts with its community. I could probably be next if I'm not careful.
Hey, catch me later, I'll buy you a beer.
Is a line commonly spoken by security guards in Half-Life and quickly became iconic due to how frequently it's repeated throughout the game.
Hey, catch me later, I'll buy you a beer.
Because NPC dialogue was limited, you would often hear the same few lines over and over, unintentionally turning them into memorable catchphrases.
Hello there.
The line became so closely associated with the game that it was later referenced again in Half-Life 2.
About that beer I owed you.
The Administrator. The Administrator is a mysterious figure mentioned throughout Half-Life. He is never seen directly and little is known about him, with only scattered references from scientists implying his authority over the Black Mesa facility.
The administrator is very concerned that we get a conclusive analysis of today's sample.
His identity remains unknown during the events of the first game, but is later revealed in Half-Life 2 to be Wallace Breen, who has since become the Administrator of Earth under the rule of the Combine. The HD models. In 2001, Valve released a high-definition pack for Half-Life, replacing many of the game's original character and weapon models with higher polygon versions. While intended as an upgrade, the changes proved to be rather controversial, as several designs were altered significantly, giving the game a noticeably different visual style. Many players often preferred the original low poly models, but in some versions of the game, the HD models were enabled by default, leading to some experiencing Half-Life much differently than what was intended. Training Course. The Hazard Course is the optional tutorial level in Half-Life, accessible from the main menu. It teaches players the basics of movement, combat, and mechanics like long jumping through a series of guided tests led by a holographic assistant named Gina Cross. It's an in-universe tutorial level with a lot of charm, but because it is completely separate from the main campaign and because the early chapters of the game naturally introduce these mechanics, many players often skip this chapter entirely, leading to the Hazard Course feeling more like a bonus level rather than a necessary introduction. PlayStation 2. Half-Life was ported to the PS2 in 2001 by Gearbox Software. It included the base game, several new features like auto-aim, and an exclusive co-op campaign called Decay, featuring Gina Cross, the same Gina Cross seen in the Hazard Course, and Colette Green. It's notable as the only place to play Decay officially, and there's also a cool bonus campaign where you play as a Vortigaunt trying to get back to Xen. I'll definitely have to make a proper video on this sport as it's pretty interesting. The expansions. Half-Life has had 2 official expansions released: Opposing Force, where you play as an HU Marine Adrian Shepard tasked with dealing with the Black Mesa incident, and Blue Shift, where you play as a security guard named Barney Calhoun trying to escape Black Mesa. Both were developed by Gearbox Software and are beloved by fans, though their canonical status is still debated to this day. The 25th Anniversary Update. On November 17, 2023, Half-Life celebrated its 25th anniversary. To mark the occasion, Valve released a major update for Half-Life alongside the full-length documentary covering the game's development. The update introduced numerous fixes, restored content, and overall polish, bringing the game closer to its intended state. Uplink. Half-Life Uplink was a standalone demo for Half-Life released in 1999. It features a unique level not found in the main game, designed to showcase the game's combat, scripted sequences, and puzzle-solving elements as a preview for potential players. For many years, Uplink remained somewhat obscure. It wasn't included with the base game, and the only official way to play it was through original physical demo releases. However, this changed with the 25th Anniversary Update, where Valve officially restored and included Uplink in Half-Life, making it easily accessible again after decades of relative obscurity. HLVR AI. Half-Life But the AI is Self-Aware is a 2020 comedy machinima series created by Wayne Radio TV. Made using Gary's mod and a VR add-on, the series presents a roleplay scenario where the NPCs of Half-Life become self-aware and behave unpredictably.
I guess you're right. There's no Gary. What did you just do to me?
Calm down.
The series gained popularity for its absurd improv humor and chaotic reinterpretation of the game's story, turning familiar moments into completely unpredictable scenarios. Even if you haven't watched it, you've most likely heard at least 1 or 2 quotes from it.
Ow!
It is also responsible for introducing me and several other people to Half-Life, so without it, this video and channel probably wouldn't exist. Recently, it also released the first episode of its much anticipated sequel, and a few years back, even a spin-off centered around Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Source. Half-Life Source was the 2004 port of Half-Life 1 to the Source engine. Despite it being advertised as a remake, it's much inferior to the original Gold Source version, as it uses the original maps and assets ported to Source but without the gear of a full remaster. Not to mention the mountain pile of bugs that somehow made it past Valve's eyes before release. They later went on to delist the title, and the only reason you'd ever want to purchase it nowadays is to use its assets on Gary's mod. Developer names and lockers. If you look closely in the locker room before grabbing the HEV suit in Anomalous Materials, the nameplates on the lockers actually have the surnames of several Half-Life developers. The same Easter egg also appears in the expansions, however this time it's the name of several Gearbox software employees. Gauss jumping. While charging the tall cannon and firing it, the player will be pushed in the opposite direction. However, if held long enough and aimed at the ground while jumping, you will be sent flying at enormous distances. This is known as Gauss jumping or Gauss boosting, and is one of the more easier movement tricks to pull off in Half-Life, while also being a core tool for speedrunning the game. New Mexico. The Black Mesa Research Facility is canonically located in New Mexico, but this detail wasn't originally planned. Early in Half-Life, you can spot a world map with a small glint over New Mexico. Fans interpreted this as a subtle hint towards the facility's location, despite it likely being an unintentional detail. Rather than correcting it, Valve later embraced the idea, effectively turning a fan theory into official canon. Lambda meaning. Okay, I don't know much about physics or, well, anything smart at all, but I'll try to explain this to the best of my abilities. Half-Life's logo has always been the lambda, but have you ever wondered what it actually means? The lambda symbol comes from nuclear physics, where it represents something called the decay constant. Basically, a measure of how fast radioactive atoms break down. The higher the lambda, the faster things fall apart. The time it takes for half of a radioactive substance to decay is called a half-life and is directly tied to the lambda. So the lambda logo in Half-Life represents decay, instability, and things slowly falling apart, which fits perfectly for a game about a science experiment gone horribly wrong. Console. By pressing this key on your keyboard, a console menu will pop up. In here you can type several commands like svcheats1, god, noclip to basically screw around with the game. It's become a beloved part of Valve game culture and has even been carried on to other engines like Source and Source 2. Xen is really bad. One of the more common opinions shared among the Half-Life community is that the Xen chapters at the end of Half-Life are really bad compared to the rest of the campaign. And it's pretty true, not gonna lie. The platforming is floaty and unnecessary, the environments look bland and uninteresting, and the 9-length boss fight is extremely tedious. Xen was apparently developed during the final stretch of the game's development, which explains the overall quality of the chapter. This marks the end of this layer. Now we're entering deeper. We're entering the waters. This is where things start to become obscure. Mawman. In Prima's official 1998 strategy guide for Half-Life, the headcrab zombie is referred to as the Mawman. This is more than unusual, as Valve has never used that name in any other medium. This also appears in a 2001 perfect guide for the game. There doesn't seem to be a clear reason for this choice, though it's arguably more interesting than simply calling them zombies. Cockroaches. For some strange reason, Half-Life includes tiny cockroaches NPCs, with an AI designed so that they can react to their environment and other entities nearby. These behaviors include seeking out Gibbs as food, hiding away from bright lights, and fleeing from larger NPCs such as scientists. This is a surprisingly detailed system for such a small creature, as many players often never even realize these things are intelligent. Further data. Half-Life Further Data was an old expansion CD mainly focused on updates and extra multiplayer content. There were two versions, Further Data V1, which pretty much slightly patched the game, and Further Data V2, which also included Team Fortress Classic. Both discs notably came with the Half-Life Uplink demo, alongside a collection of multiplayer maps, player models, and spray logos. The exact release dates aren't fully known, but file dates suggest early to mid-1999. Interestingly, parts of these discs, like maps, models, and sprays, were later brought back in the game's 25th anniversary update, preserving a small piece of this obscure release. High-definition source. During the development of one of the beta branches of Half-Life Source, a user by the name of ChipSnapper suggested the addition of the HD models be included into the game on Valve's GitHub, linking a Gay Banana mod by the name of High-definition source. It eventually got added into the game just a few weeks later. However, what Valve didn't realize is that the mod was entirely fan-made, and many textures such as the view model arms look nothing like the original, meaning Valve pretty much stole a mod from some random dude without giving them proper credit. And you can still see this to this day. Multiplayer weapons. In multiplayer, several weapons behave differently compared to the single-player campaign of Half-Life. For example, the crossbow fires explosive bolts instead of standard ones, and the revolver can be zoomed in for more precise shots. These changes were likely made to better suit multiplayer gameplay, making weapons more effective in fast-paced matches. The tram ride has spatial inconsistencies. The opening tram ride in Half-Life is meant to show Gordon arriving at Black Mesa. However, if you pay extra close attention, you may notice that it doesn't form a coherent real-world layout. For example, you pass an outdoor area with a helicopter, go deep inside the facility, and then seem to come back near that same spot. Because of this, many people suggest that Black Mesa's layout is physically impossible, and the tram ride is best explained as a game-focused level design rather than a real, consistent space. Gus. Gus is the nickname given to Black Mesa forklift drivers. Why is he named Gus? I don't know, but it became a sort of inside joke within the Half-Life community. Alpha 0.52. The Alpha 0.52 is an early pre-release build of Half-Life, dated back September 8, 1997. It was originally distributed on CD-ROMs to journalists for preview purposes before being lost to obscurity and later resurfacing publicly in 2013 after a Reddit user revealed its existence and shared its contents. This build represents a much more stripped down and experimental version of the game. It includes 6 early chapters, a technical demo showcasing features of the then in development Gold Source engine, and a multiplayer test mode. Hidden within the files is also an early version of the game's storyline, which is already surprisingly close to the final narrative. In this version, the Black Mesa experiment is conducted using a device called the Portal device, rather than the anti-mass spectrometer. Instead of playing as Gordon Freeman, the protagonist is an unnamed weapons research scientist who has apparently never touched a weapon in his life. As in the final game, the experiment goes horribly wrong, leading to an alien invasion of Earth and forcing the player to survive the aftermath. Visually and tonally, this build is significantly different from the final release. Black Mesa is depicted more like a bright, cartoonish laboratory than a realistic research facility. Scientists and security guards have a more exaggerated, almost comedic appearance, and the player character model is a large bearded figure nicknamed Ivan the Space Biker. Despite these differences, many core elements of Half-Life are already present here, including environmental storytelling and an immersive first-person narrative approach. In that sense, even this early alpha already contains the foundation of what would eventually become the final game. Strange multiplayer models. In the deathmatch mode of Half-Life, players can pick and choose from a variety of different character models to represent themselves, but some of them are surprisingly odd. There's of course your standard options like the G-Man, Marines, and security guards, but a few others don't quite line up with the main game. For instance, the multiplayer versions of Gordon and the Scientist look noticeably different from their single-player counterparts, even though there are already models used in the campaign. Things get even stranger with models added through expansions like Half-Life Further Data. There's this strange cannibal model made by Chuck Jones, a random person named Ken, and a strange guy named Too Much Coffee Man, which has a surprisingly unusual history. He originates from a comic strip by the same name and was included simply because someone at Valve thought it would be funny. He was even brought back in the 25th anniversary update. There are also other obscure models, like a Santa Claus, a version of Gordon with a pumpkin on his head, and this strange fucking rat thing named Rat Fink. Weird. Construction Worker. Half-Life contains an unused construction worker model hidden in its files, likely a leftover from the game's early alpha development. It never appears in the final game, and while his role is unknown, many have speculated that he was planned to appear in early sections like the Black Mesa Transit Ride or the Blastbit chapter, but there's no real confirmation. The Cabal. During the development of Half-Life, Valve used an internal design process known as the Cabal. This was a rotating group of team members who would regularly review and refine levels together, rather than leaving them to a single developer. While unconventional, this collaborative approach is often credited for the game's consistent quality and polish across its levels. Sometimes. German censorship. The German version of Half-Life was heavily censored. Human enemies like the HU soldiers were replaced with mechanical robots, any form of blood or gore was removed, and death animations were altered entirely. I'm not really sure if these changes still apply to this day, so if anyone watching this is German, is this true? GameCube and Dreamcast. Half-Life was planned to be ported to both the GameCube and Dreamcast consoles, both developed by Gearbox Software. The Dreamcast version was shown at trade shows and was reportedly very close to completion. However, it was cancelled the moment Sega discontinued the Dreamcast. The GameCube port, on the other hand, was dropped before it even began production, as there wasn't much faith in the system. Gun changes. The HD model pack in Half-Life also made several unnecessary weapon changes. For instance, the original 9mm pistol, based on a Glock 17, was replaced with the Beretta 92 FS. The MP5 style assault rifle was changed into a Colt Model 727, and so much more. These changes didn't affect gameplay and were mostly cosmetic, but they remain a noticeable difference between the original models and HD versions. Gordon's ponytail. In Half-Life, the player character Gordon Freeman is never seen directly during normal gameplay. However, by viewing his player model through console commands or external tools, you can make notice of a strange detail, a ponytail. This feature was never emphasized in official artwork or promotional material, and in later entries of the series it was removed entirely, leaving this strange characteristic only present in the first Half-Life title. Ricochet. Ricochet is one of Half-Life's earliest mods, developed by Robin Walker to showcase how quick and easy it was to develop a mod for Half-Life. In it, players fight by launching discs at each other while standing on floating platforms in space, falling off meaning instant death. Despite its simple concept, the mod is often remembered for how strange and surreal it feels, especially compared to Half-Life itself. One of this channel's earliest videos actually goes over the entire game, so if you want to learn more about it, just go watch that, I guess. The endings. Half-Life has two main endings, one where you accept the G-Man's offer to work for him and get put in status for an unknown period of time, and one where you decline and get teleported into an arena full of alien grunts. However, ever since Half-Life 2, I assume we all know which one is the canon one. Gordon's baby. In Gordon Freeman's locker, you can find a framed picture of a baby. This has led to many people thinking Gordon had sex, and that this was his child. However, in reality, he's a virgin, and that was just a picture of one of the developer's kids who was put there as a neat little Easter egg. The_horror.wav. The horror.wav refers to a series of strange sounds you can hear while playing on a rail. Take a listen. These sounds go completely unexplained. We don't know where they are coming from or from who they are coming from. Many speculate that these are auditory hallucinations from Gordon Freeman, perhaps from the trauma of the entire experience leading up to Unreal. However, their presence in the game is shrouded in mystery. Gordon's wife. Gina Cross, recognizable as the holographic assistant in the training course and as one of the playable characters in Half-Life Decay, was at one point intended to be Gordon Freeman's wife. During the game's early development, she was conceived as both his spouse and fellow scientist, present in the lab during the Black Mesa incident. Gabe Newell had envisioned giving players the choice between a male or female protagonist, with interactions between the two woven throughout the game. However, the concept never made it past the planning stage. Office Complex Maintenance Area. In Office Complex, by breaking these ceiling tiles, you can access a ladder leading to a secret room with some ammo and a turret that you can disable. I'm not exactly sure what was the purpose of including this area in the first place, as many people often run past this location without looking twice. But it's there, I guess. Race X. Race X is the primary alien race of enemies the player encounters during Opposing Forces campaign. Originating from a dimension somewhere beyond Zen, they were able to enter Earth as a result of the Resonance Cascade. Unlike the creatures of Zen, Race X operates as an invasive force, deploying various species such as the Shock Trooper, the Pit Drone, and Gene Worm. Their goal appears to be the assimilation of Earth's environment, using the Gmor to terraform the planet and make it suitable for their ecosystem. Their place within the Half-Life lore is somewhat ambiguous. While Opposing Force is an official expansion developed by Gearbox Software and published by Valve, later entries such as Half-Life 2 and its episodes make no reference to Race X or their invasion. Valve has also never explicitly confirmed whether the events and elements introduced in Opposing Force, including Race X, are fully canon or separate. Capture the Flag. Interestingly, Opposing Force contains a rather unique Capture the Flag mode for multiplayer that I don't see many people talking about. There are two teams, the Black Mesa and Opposing Force teams, and players must infiltrate the enemy base, steal their flag, and return it to their base. There also seems to be a sort of class system, some cool power-ups that you can pick up, and even this cool song that plays once you score a point. Chum Toad. The Chum Toad is a small, purple-like frog with one eye that was cut from the original Half-Life, but makes several cameos in the two expansion packs developed by Gearbox Software. Right at the end of Opposing Force, if you shoot this vent enough times, a Chum Toad will pop out of the ceiling. Likewise, in Blue Shift, you can find a box hidden inside a locker. Shooting it enough times, a Chum Toad is revealed to be hiding in it. These guys don't do anything special and cannot be interacted with, but serve as neat Easter eggs for those in the know. Deathmatch Classic. Deathmatch Classic is a multiplayer-focused game released by Valve in 2001. It's basically a remake of the original Quake Deathmatch experience, but built using the Gold Source engine. In fact, most of this game's identity is just Quake. The weapons are blatantly taken directly from the game, some of the sounds too, and the few maps are undoubtedly inspired by it. With that being said, it shouldn't come as a surprise that this game is pretty much infamous for being absolutely dead. No one plays this shit, man. This channel's first video was actually about this game, so yet again, if you want to learn more about it, just go watch that, I guess. Software and OpenGL rendering. Half-Life has two rendering modes, software and OpenGL. Software rendering makes the game look much more pixelated and crisp, while OpenGL goes for a blurrier, more mushier look. There are also some other differences, such as the fact the water looks completely different in software rendering, but which one is better is entirely up to you. We've made it to the bottom of the iceberg. There's no going back now, so let's keep exploring. Hyper-intelligent AI. This entry refers to the game's extremely advanced AI system for its enemies. They could communicate with each other, smell their surroundings, retreat when outmatched, follow a leader, and so much more. The HCO Marines in particular behaved in ways that felt genuinely tactical for 1998. Makes me wish the Combines behaved just as interesting. Gordon is a nobody. Gordon Freeman is Half-Life's protagonist, but if you actually stop and think about it, does he even exist as a person? He never speaks, never reacts, never makes a single decision you don't make for him. He is, for all intents and purposes, a pair of hands and a crowbar. Valve did this on purpose. The idea was that you, the player, are Gordon. There are no cutscenes pulling you out of his perspective, and no voice lines reminding you that you're watching someone else's story. Half-Life is your story, and Gordon is just your vessel. But it does raise a kind of weird question. When people say Gordon Freeman is a great character, what are they actually talking about? Because beyond his iconic look, there really isn't much there. He's a name, resume, and a reputation built entirely by people who aren't him. He might be the most beloved nobody in gaming history. Cut female scientist. Half-Life was initially going to have a female scientist character who would have betrayed the player in a supposed communications center chapter. Both her and her chapter were eventually cut, however, as the developers couldn't figure out a way to make the player trust her enough. This double agent concept was later reused for Judith Mossman, though the character's textures can be found in Half-Life Source for some reason. Life will be different. One of the early promotional materials for Half-Life is a surreal poster featuring a baby alongside Lambda Simple and the caption "Life will be different." I'm not sure what the designers were smoking when they made this, but it sure captured my attention, I guess. Exploding penguins. In Opposing Force, for some reason, one of the available weapons you can find in multiplayer include exploding penguins. They're a weapon similar to Snarks, however, once thrown, they'll approach any player, even the thrower, and after a while just explode. Yeah. G-Man's briefcase. Throughout all of the Half-Life games, the G-Man is always seen carrying his iconic briefcase, but it's never opened in any game. Interestingly, in the game files of Half-Life 1, there are a series of textures showing what's inside. Some documents, pencils, a pistol, and what appears to be some kind of identification card. Despite this, the briefcase is never used or revealed during gameplay. Perhaps it was meant to be opened at some point in development. Preliminary findings. Half-Life Preliminary Findings was an old CD-ROM that dates back to October 1997. It was bundled with Diablo Hellfire and several other Sierra titles in order to promote Half-Life. The disc includes a 2-minute gameplay preview of what looks like to be an early version of On a Rail, alongside several interviews with the developers and tons of screenshots of the game. Despite it being an official release, I'm a bit surprised there isn't much discussion around it, making it a surprisingly obscure glimpse into Half-Life's early development. Dead HEV suits in Xen. In the Xen dimension, you can find several dead HEV suits next to some supplies while exploring. This implies that previous expeditions to Xen were made and the people who went there didn't come back. The only Half-Life achievement. During the 25th anniversary of Half-Life, Valve released a special website to celebrate the occasion. Alongside some info about the update, the site hides a few fun secrets. You can click the crowbar at the bottom to pick it up and even attack enemies on the page. By hitting and killing both the zombie and headcrab, you unlock the only Half-Life achievement. The snipers are fake. While playing Half-Life, you might occasionally encounter HU snipers targeting Gordon from distant buildings. If you try looking at them with no clip, the snipers are revealed to be brush entities rather than normal NPCs. Pretty clever on Valve's part. George Washington scientist. These scientist models in Half-Life are inspired by real-world scientists, and the so-called Einstein scientist is no exception. While clearly based on Albert Einstein, one of the game's artists, Chuck Jones, revealed that the model was also partially inspired by George Washington, and once you notice it, you really can't unsee it. Hostile Takeover. Hostile Takeover was a cancelled expansion pack that was going to be developed by 2015 Inc. It was apparently going to take place in one of Black Mesa's support facilities, Allied Processing. We were going to follow a character described as Junior G-Man, as he defended the facility against government agents. It was going to include zombie monkeys, a drivable tank, a remote-controlled car bomb, and so much more, though sadly the game was cancelled despite it being near completion, as Valve feared that they may oversaturate the market with so much Half-Life content. Opposing Force German version. The German version of Opposing Forces multiplayer greatly changes player models, oddly enough by putting everyone in either HEV suits or mechs. Yeah. Mark Laidlaw voicing characters. While the game was being developed, story writer Mark Laidlaw temporarily voiced several characters, including the scientists and security guards.
Okay, why not? Didn't want to die alone anyway.
These voice lines were only placeholders, however, and were later replaced in the final game. You're in the barrel today. Right after you equip the HEV suit in the second chapter, a security guard lets you through an airlock and says,
Go right on through, sir. Looks like you're in the barrel today.
It sounds like a random line, but it's actually a subtle joke. A sex joke. The phrase being in the barrel means it's your turn to deal with something unpleasant. The humor comes from an old crude sailor joke where US Marines used to relieve themselves using a barrel with a hole in it. Everything seems fine until one day it's your turn to be inside the barrel. Gabe Newell thought it was so funny he kept it in the game. The only scientist in Xen. During the 9/11 boss fight, in one of the rooms where you can get teleported in, you can find the scientist just out and about, for some reason. Toilet Scientist Conversation. In the PlayStation 2 version of Half-Life, the scientists in the bathroom actually have a conversation with one another.
You've been able to get the beverage machine to work yet? I hope those containment parameters are still nominal.
Strangely enough, this detail is exclusive to the PS2 version alone, as in the Steam version they're completely silent. Scrapped 9/11 dialogue. The 9/11 in Half-Life has several eerie voice lines, most of them cryptic and fragmented.
Thieves, you all are thieves, you all are.
However, there are multiple unused lines hidden inside the game files. Take a listen.
The last. I am the last. Win, you cannot win. You are man. He is not man. For you he waits for you. Their slaves we are, their slaves we are.
These cut lines suggest a deeper meaning behind Nyland's character, hinting at manipulation, servitude, and possibly a greater unseen force, marking its role within the Half-Life story even more mysterious. Gordon's glasses. While Gordon is depicted to wear glasses in most of his promotional material, oddly enough, this detail is completely absent within the Half-Life 1 player model. There are a few encounters where he does have them, however, such as his Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, and Opposing Force model, but it's strange it's never included in his vanilla model. G-Man and Scientist conversation. At the beginning of Anomalous Materials, you can catch an early sighting of the G-Man, talking to an unnamed Black Mesa scientist inside a room you cannot enter. If you try listening to their conversation, it is extremely hard to tell what they're saying. Even when trying to no-clip your way into their room, the dialogue is still unintelligible. However, multiple fans have managed to transcribe their conversation, and upon closer inspection, they really aren't saying much. Well, we've reached the bottom, but why stop there? Let's get even deeper. Let's enter the deep waters. Dr. Smithers. Dr. Smithers is the name of this random scientist you can find in Blast Pit.
This is my hiding spot, and I'm not moving until the situation is drastically improved. Now go away, and don't tell anyone I'm here.
I honestly have no idea where this name could come from. Probably someone at Valve was super bored and thought it would be funny to name him something like Smithers or something. Be careful, Gordon. At the beginning of Unforeseen Consequences, as the scientist opens the door for you to move forward, he was meant to play a specific voice line which was accidentally cut from the game.
Be careful, Gordon.
It ended up being unused because it was accidentally misspelled during the map making process, so the scientist ends up not saying anything. Broken tentacle cutscene. For the longest time, this cutscene of the tentacle smashing through the window to kill a scientist was completely broken, where the two were out of sync and looked very jarring. This was fixed with the 25th anniversary update, however. Alpha X Quake. The 0.52 alpha of Half-Life is actually fully compatible with Quake, meaning you can play as the Ranger inside the alpha maps. This is due to the fact that at the time, the Gold Source engine was still in its early stages, meaning it maintained a lot of its Quake code intact. This is not the case for today, however. The fate of Gina Cross and Colette Green. After beating Half-Life Decay, the game concludes with the cutscene of some old random fart talking, leaving the fate of its characters unclear. However, in Half-Life Opposing Force, you can find what appears to be the corpse of Gina Cross in an underwater area of Xen, suggesting she didn't survive the incident. Her exact cause of death is never fully explained, only that she died at the age of 25. According to Randy Pitchford, Gearbox Software's former CEO, Gina is indeed dead, and Colette Green has apparently been put into stasis by the G-Man, leaving her ultimate outcome a mystery. Government Man. The G-Man gets his name from the term G-Man, which is shorthand for government man. The phrase is commonly used to describe secretive government agents, especially those involved in intelligent or covert operations, fitting perfectly with the G-Man's mysterious role in the series. Prospero. Prospero is a cancelled game developed by Valve that supposedly predates Half-Life. It was an ambitious sci-fi game that was shelved when Valve pivoted to develop Half-Life. Very little is known about it, except that some code may have been recycled into Half-Life 1. In 2006, Kip Newell said that he would like to return to Prospero one day after Team Fortress 2 had been completed. However, I think we all know how that ended up. Well, we've ended up in the abyss, so let's finish what we started. Personal holocaust. When refusing the offer to work for the G-Man at the end of Half-Life, he says this.
Well, it looks like we won't be working together. No regrets, Mr. Freeman.
However, an earlier version of this voice line was much longer and more strange.
Well, it looks like we won't be working together. No regrets, Mr. Freeman. But there are a few survivors of your personal holocaust who would like the chance to meet the man responsible for the total annihilation of their race.
This cut dialogue paints Gordon in a far more unsettling light, suggesting that his actions didn't just stop the invasion, but may have led to the near destruction of entire species, describing it as a personal holocaust. This was likely cut due to obvious reasons. Every copy of Half-Life is personalized. Have you ever noticed that no two people actually experience Half-Life the same way, even though the game itself never changes? There's this theory going around that every run of the game is personalized. It changes and adapts to the player in order to adhere to their desires and skills. This is done through an apparent experimental artificial intelligence that modifies the game to the player's needs. Half-Life has always had a remarkably advanced AI, and Valve has done this before with their other games, Left 4 Dead's Director for instance. It is built on this exact idea, a hidden system that watches how you're doing and adjusts the entire experience around you. So who's to say they didn't experiment with something like this years earlier, quietly tucked inside Half-Life? At the end of the day, we all remember this game differently, and maybe that's not a coincidence. Ricochet 2, Do Not Research. Ricochet 2 was the apparent sequel to Ricochet, which was shadow dropped by Valve before quietly being pulled from the Steam store without notice. According to various sources, the game was just an expanded version of Ricochet with new maps and power-ups, but the reason it was removed wasn't for technical or licensing issues. Instead, because something about the game itself, if it even exists, was wrong. Players who bought and played it during the short window it was released reported unexpected physical reactions, like vertigo and disorientation, which lingered even long after closing the game. No official cause was ever given. However, theories suggest that some particular mix in either the game's minimalist visual style, its wide empty spaces, or its unsettling audio design produced sort of sustained sensory dissonance, subtle enough that you wouldn't notice it building, but by the time you did, it had already settled in. Because Ricochet is kind of a meme game, any search for its sequel's existence gets drowned immediately in either joke posts or completely unrelated results, which is either a coincidence or the most effective cover imaginable. When people asked Gabe Newell about this game, his response was always the same. The team had just lost interest in the project and that it never existed in the first place. But the question remains, if this game does exist, why is Valve trying to cover it up? What is inside this game that made people so disturbed the company had to remove any trace of its existence? Nah, I'm just fucking with you, it doesn't exist. And with that, the iceberg is complete. Thanks to everyone for watching this video all the way through. Since I couldn't find a proper Half-Life 1 iceberg, I decided to make one myself. It's my first time doing so, and if you have any particular critiques you'd like to give, just leave it in the comments, as I always read them. But anyway, sorry this video took so long to make. Because the school year is 2 months away from ending, I practically have to lock in during its final stretch, but just wait to see what I have in store for next video. But anyway, see you then.